The Holy Trinity. What do we know, right? What do we know about the Holy Trinity? We have what? The Christian Holy Trinity is who? Okay, so we have what? The Father, right? The Son and the Holy Spirit. Right? And I know once you have gone through and you've started learning outside of Hebrew Abrahamic religions, you know that this is inaccurate because it is an all-male Trinity. And what's the way in which we come out of it and we go where? Like, where is the Holy Trinity? It represents the feminine, right? The next thing you're going to think of is who? The next thing you're going to think of is this is a Christian, right? This is the cross. This is the cross. This is Christian, right? This is the Christian one. The next one we have is Kemetic, right? So here we have what? The Ankh, right? These are the Holy Trinities that we have. And here, this is man, woman, child, right? So they have Osiris, Mother Isis, right? And then they have the child, which is Horus, which she birthed Horus parthenogenetically. We know this is virgin birth, right? We know this part. So why he's here, I'm not really sure. But this is what they consider to be balance over this one. Like, this one's not balanced because it's all male, right? And this one is more balanced because you have the father, the mother, and the child. Am I right? So is this right? Is this correct? Is the question. And even this is wrong. They're both wrong. Okay? So in your books, cross it out. They're both wrong. They're both wrong. Okay? You probably didn't know I was going to say that, but they're both wrong. Okay, and I'm going to show you why they're both wrong. Simply because the woman is present does not mean that it's correct. Okay, like, because she's incorporated in the Holy Trinity doesn't mean that it's correct. Okay, so if we think about just different Holy Trinities, even the Hindu one, right? The Hindu one, they have Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, right? That's all male as well. It's a lot like this one. But they also incorporate the feminine because each of these gods, creator, sustainer, destroyer, they have wives, right? They each have wives. Brahma has, so what happens is, with this one, they each have wives, so that means that there is another trinity within the Hindu pantheon, right? There's another trinity here. So this has the wives. Brahma's wife is Sarah Saraswati. Okay? She's the goddess of learning. If you didn't know that, she's the goddess of knowledge and learning. She is the creator of the Vedas, so all knowledge comes from her. Okay? Vishnu's wife is Lakshmi. Lakshmi is the goddess of fortune and business. So a lot of times people will, go to Lakshmi or serve her, worship her when they want to advance in business or, be prosperous in life. Again, she is the wife of the sustainer, right? Creator, sustainer, and destroyer. So Shiva, his wife is Parvati. Okay, Parvati is the epitome of the mother goddess, right? She's the epitome of the mother goddess in the Hindu pantheon. She has many, many names, okay? So basically, she's supposed to be the mother avatar for every other goddess that you see, okay? Parvati. And she represents the, he's the destroyer, so she represents the process of liberation for the person, okay? So the process of liberation for the person. So that's what this is. So if we just focus on incorporation of feminine, then that means the feminine can be incorporated in every trinity. If you really think about it, it can be. If you really think about it, we can incorporate the mother here. We can just say, God had a wife, and God's wife is who? Who's God's wife? God's wife is Ashera, right? If you go back far enough, then you come across the truth of everything, right? And if you talk about the Son, which is Jesus Christ, Jesus' wife is, who's Jesus' wife? Jesus' wife is Mary Magdalene, right? That's who they say Jesus' wife is. So you have Ashera, Mary Magdalene, or Sophia. There's some people who say Sophia is his wife, but I don't think that is accurate. So yeah, and the Holy Spirit, meaning the mother goddess. If you go to the who knows about these people? I think it's the Gnostics. Back in the old days, I forgot, but they say that the mother goddess, the goddess of wisdom, is Sophia, right? So honestly, if you really think about it, we can incorporate the feminine in any holy trinity if we just delve back far enough, right? But even that, all of this is wrong. It's all wrong. This is all wrong. Not necessarily wrong, but this is not the ultimate trinity for Yanism, right? So when you go here, they're focusing on the avatars. They're focusing on gender. This here is focused on gender. That's why you have father, mother, child. That's why they incorporated the woman there, because they say that when looking at real life, the feminine is an integral part of creation. So why is she missing from the Christian Holy Trinity? So they just put her in there because we're thinking, we're going with our perception of, just 3D avatar life. We're not thinking on a cosmic level. So the Holy Trinity that I'm talking about today is more about the cosmic level of the Trinity, not just our manifestations, okay? Not just our manifestations, because this again is manifestations, right? Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva are all avatars of the ultimate consciousness. We know this. We spoke about the unmanifested and the manifested. So all of this is manifestations, right? Manifestations. So this is not, where we're going with it. We want to make sure we have a clearer understanding of, what the Holy Trinity is truly. And also, if the world started off with just women, how in the world would this be correct? With the father, the mother, and the child. There wasn't fathers in the beginning, right? If women birthed children parthenogenically, right, there wasn't any fathers. There was masculine energy present, but there wasn't any fathers. There was only mothers and daughters because they were clones of themselves. Mothers and daughters for quite some time before the male was introduced into this reality. So this is something we have to think about. So when we think about the Holy Trinity, we have to think about, well, what is the Trinity before the de-evolution of the 3D avatars? That's what you have to think about, right? So this is all incorrect. This is wrong too. Not in manifestation form. We're going beyond manifestation form. We are transcending all thought patterns, okay? We're transcending all thought patterns, okay? So, Yanism, right? What is our Holy Trinity? Okay. What is our Holy Trinity, okay? The Holy Trinity for us is, again, not any particular person, but it is the three minds, okay? The three minds. What is the three minds? Do anybody know what the three minds is? You can put it in the comments below if you know what it is. So go ahead and put in the comments if you know what the three minds is. The three minds is the brain, the heart, and the womb. These are the three minds. This is the original Holy Trinity, okay? The original Holy Trinity. Minds is the brain, the heart, and the womb. So this is what the Holy Trinity was before there was different sex, before there was different, and when I say sex, I mean like divisions. I know you can't tell how I'm speaking, but yeah, before there was genders, right? Before there was different genders or the fluidity of gender. That's why gender is fluid, because there wasn't always the different genders. So what we're seeing in reality is our morphism back into the original state of humanity. And a lot of people are not ready for that truth, but that's what it is. We are morphing back into our original optimal state, okay? So that's why gender went from binary to fluid, and then after fluid, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to morph into one. You know, there's only really one gender. That's why gender itself is an illusion, because we all know, especially in the womb, we all know that every child comes out one way before a certain amount of testosterone is placed into the child, and then it expresses as an XY chromosome. But before that, it's an XX. Every baby's an XX until it gets the proper amount of hormones to change it. But this is what it was before there was genders, okay? And I meant to do a video on gender being an illusion, but I think I'll do a video on that. I'm not sure. But yeah, this is the actual Holy Trinity, okay? Before I get into why this is it, we have to understand what is the mind, right? What is the mind? Like, how can we tell what a mind is? You know, because usually when people talk about the mind, they're talking about the brain, and that's it. They're not talking about anything else. So how is the heart a mind? How is the womb a mind, right? So what is a mind? We have to ask ourselves this. And the first definition I'm going to give you is the traditional definition. We're going to basically utilize the characteristics of what makes a mind to determine if these are even minds, right? So the mind the element of the person that allows them to think, feel, reason, you know what I'm saying? So what is the mind? It's the element of the person that enables them to be aware of the world and their experiences, okay? To think, feel, reason, understand, and remember, okay? So the four defining qualities that we're going to use to identify what a mind is really, really simple, okay? Because the mind has four functions, right? The mind has four functions, and these are going to be the functions. The mind must be capable of subjectivity, okay? Desire. You must be able to want, right? Consciousness. You must be able to think, you know, have thoughts, reason, things like that. So, consciousness is another one. Must be able to think and remember. intentionality, okay? There must be a defining purpose. It must be able to have intent and reason, okay? And the last one is agency. So this means that there must be activity or sensory motor activity, okay? Sensory motor activity. So when we're thinking about the three minds, we have to be able to determine whether something is a mind. And obviously the brain is not the only mind. Mind and brain is different, right? Do each of these things possess the four properties that would constitute them to be a mind, right? So the brain, we all know what the brain does. As far as subjectivity for the brain, we understand desire comes from our hormonal release. Our hormonal release meaning cortisol, dopamine, oxytocin, all of that. These are all chemicals in the brain. So when when a certain chemical is released in the brain, that ignites our desire, right? So then we have consciousness. So of course we're able to think, we're able to remember. We do have a memory bank, that's why we're able to remember certain things. 3, intentionality, reason. So are we able to reason? Yes, we have the ability to critically analyze. We have the ability to, search, divine, learn. Okay, so the brain is there to learn, right? And it also is there to control the body. So the last one is agency. So yes, the brain functions on its own. It functions on its own, and the sensory motor activity is basically the neurotransmitters, the neurons in your brain. They send signals all over your body telling your limbs what to do, telling you what to say, telling you basically what things taste like. So when you taste something on your taste buds, your brain is interpreting that that taste for you to tell you what it is, so your mind can figure out what it is. So yeah, that's pretty much how the brain works. So we already know the brain is the mind, but I just want to go through that with you, right? So the next thing, we're going to focus on the heart, right? The heart. Now, the heart, if you've never came across any studies that talk about how the heart has its own consciousness, that's what we're going to talk about today. So I have with me, what you would call an article that I want to read, okay? I want to read this article for you guys. If you are in our group chat, you already know that after class, what I'll do is I will put the link to the article, or I will most definitely post the screenshots of anything that I read in class so that you can go over it and read it at your own leisure without having to go through the whole video and listen again. Or if you're looking for any particular thing that you want to write down, I will have the screenshots in our group chat. Okay, so if you aren't in our group chat and you want to be in our group chat, just write it in the comments so I can know to add you. And then you can basically have access to all of the materials that I present to you during classes, okay? So this one is talking about the heart and whether it is its own mind independent of the brain. That's what it's talking about, okay? So it says, in Western medicine, the heart has been downplayed historically as a pump, mechanistically taking orders from a bossy brain. But recently, the heart's role is being re-examined with 40,000 neurons. It sends more signals to the brain than it receives, okay? As integrative cardiologist Mimi Garnett, author of The Heart Speaks, The heart is a multi-layered, complex organ possessing intelligence, memory, decision-making abilities, independent from the mind. Okay, so again, I will put these things inside our group chat so you can have this, and you can, of course, go check out the book if you would like to. But I'm just going through the article that's bringing these things. Okay, so it says the electromagnetic field it generates is about 100 times stronger than the brain's magnetic range and can detect up to 3 feet away from the body, report researchers at the pioneering Heart Math Institute in Boulder Creek, California. Okay, so it is 100 times, the electromagnetic field is 100 times stronger from your heart than it is from the brain. And the heart also gives back neurons to the brain. Okay, so neurons aren't just in your brain, it's in your heart as well. Okay, so then it says, they found that one person's brain waves can synchronize to another person's heart, and 2 hearts can synchronize to each other, which may help explain why people are drawn or repelled by each other. When the heart's rhythm pattern becomes erratic and disordered during stress and negative emotions, the neural signals traveling to the brain's emotional centers also get disrupted, hindering clear thinking and reasoning, which may help explain why we make dubious decisions during stress. Okay. It also says, through magnetic imaging technology, the flow of neurotransmitters can be seen. Okay, so emotions like anger, fear, grief, and anxiety set off a cascade of reactions involving the hormone cortisol and proteins called cytokines, creating an inflammatory response that, if it becomes chronic, can promote the accumulation of plaque in the arteries that can become unstable and rupture, triggering blood clots that lead to strokes and heart attacks. Okay? So, your heart, again, the emotions that you experience have the ability to affect your physiology. That's what they're saying in these studies, okay? Just like the brain affects your physiology, making sure you do certain things, the heart does the same thing, okay? Okay, so it also says there is what you would call another article. It's actually a book that someone wrote about their personal experience changing from monk Buddhist life to regular life. So this is their experience, okay? They said the jewel in the lotus is the translation of the universal compassion mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, okay? While it has many meanings, one explanation of its symbolism is the compassion arises when the jewel of the mind rests in the lotus of the heart. So the awakened mind has a diamond-like clarity when this clear insight rests in the heart's tender compassion. Both dimensions of liberation are fulfilled, okay? So they're basically saying that through your compassion, that's when you reach a different level of intellect, if that makes sense. Okay, you have to have emotional intelligence as well as just your logical intelligence. We know this because we have relationships and we understand how important emotional intelligence is. Okay, so it says in Buddhist psychology, mind and heart are often described by one word, sita. Okay, I'm gonna just write it down so you know what it is. Sita. That means heart and mind in one word in the Buddhist psychology. Okay, This heart mind has many dimensions. It contains and includes all our thoughts, our feelings, and emotions. Responses, intuition, temperament, and consciousness itself. When we speak of mind in the West, we usually refer only to the rational thought and stories. While the discriminating mind has a practical value, it can also separate us from the world. Our ideas easily create us and them, good and bad, past and future. Our thoughts also like to create imaginary problems. As Mark Twain put it, my life has been filled with terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened. Okay? Along with thoughts and impulses, Buddhist psychology also describes feelings as a natural aspect of heart-mind. Okay? So, the heart-mind is known to the Buddhist monks. Okay? Again, us being on the western side of the hemisphere, we are limited in our understanding of a lot of things. So, we have to be able to travel and go to the eastern part of things where they know how to incorporate the feminine aspects in their understanding of life and their understanding of reality, right? But out here, we dismiss everything that's feminine. So that means going inside. That means, you know what I'm saying? We dismiss all those things. That's why we don't have a true understanding of things. That's why we're not balanced in general, because we're all on the masculine side of everything, okay? So now let's examine the heart, right? The heart, does it have subjectivity, desire? Obviously it does, because when we are in relationships and we feel what we want, you know, the heart wants what the heart wants, you know, love is love, I can't help who I love, right? That's what subjectivity is, and that's why a lot of times our heart and our brain tend to not agree with each other. Okay, so does it have subjectivity and desire? Yes, it does. Okay, consciousness, think and remember. So obviously from what we read, we understand that yes, the heart can connect to the brain, and it also can think and remember. So yes, it has neurons. Yes, it can do all those things. So yes, we read that. And also the heart, does it have intentionality, reason, right? What is the purpose of the heart doing everything that it's doing, right? The purpose of the heart doing everything that it's doing is for connectivity, okay? Connectivity. Connectivity and, coming together. And also sustaining life. Okay, so here we have agency, motor, sensory activity. So yes, the heart obviously works on its own. It works on its own. It pumps blood through the body, and it actually changes the rhythm in which it beats to account for your levels of blood pressure in your body. So it knows what to do. You know what I'm saying? So yes, it knows what to do, and it remembers, like, it has a cycle, it has the ability to, the agency to work on its own and know what to do in certain situations. You know what I'm saying? So, and it remembers. So if you change your mentality, if you start breathing slower, it knows to lower your heart rate because you're more relaxed. It also changes, like if you're experiencing anxiety, your heart beats faster, like, you know what I'm saying? So it knows what to do in certain situations based on your physiology, the emotions that you're experiencing, blah blah blah, right? So now we move on to the womb. How is the womb a mind? How is the womb a mind, right? Okay, so let's go into how the womb is in itself. It has the same capacity as both the brain and the heart. Okay, So I also want to read something to you. Okay, I want to read something to you. Yes, again, I have another article for you guys that I'm going to just read. And it's about the womb and its ability to think. Does it have a consciousness, or is it just an incubator, right? So again, this is from a book, actually. This is from a book. The book is called, it's an article that cites different books. So this is one of the books. The book is called Sperm Competition and Sexual Selection, 1998. This is by T.R. Burkhead and A.P. Mahler. Okay, and this is from the chapter Sperm Competition, Sexual Selection, and Different Routes to Fitness. Okay, so it says genetic compatibility between males may affect the outcome of mates may affect the outcome of sperm competition, because only compatible combination of gametes will give rise to viable offspring. Okay, superficially, it may appear incredibly wasteful to engage in copulation and fertilization and subsequently discard offspring of incompatible genotypes. Okay, this is only partly the case. For example, the major histocompatibility complex, because while I'm reading, it just gives you the abbreviation, so I want to make sure that we know what it is as I'm reading. It says the major histocompatibility complex, or MHC, which is associated with disease resistance in vertebrates, also plays an important role in mate choice in both birds and mammals, including humans. Okay, so individuals with complementary MHC haplotypes produce viable offspring, whereas zygotes of incompatible genotypes are aborted. Okay, so when they say aborted, they use the word aborted. What they're talking about is the process of miscarriage. Viable offspring really is about, like, I don't know if many of you know, probably if you've had children before, the first sonogram that you get after receiving a positive pregnancy test is checking the viability of the offspring. So they check the viability of the offspring, and you keep going to get checkups because they want to make sure that your offspring remains viable and you're able to carry to term. Okay, so that's what viable offspring means, that you're able to carry to term. Now, when something is not a viable, when you don't have a viable pregnancy, that means that you won't be able to carry it to term, and nature will decide, and you will go through a miscarriage. Okay, so, and that's what a natural abortion is. Nature will choose whether, if you don't have compatible genes with your partner, then your child will not be able to be carried to term. You know what I'm saying? So again, this is a sensitive topic for a lot of people depending on their experience, but you know what I'm talking about, and you can kind of understand why this happens, especially since couples could be together for years and years and years, and the man can have children with his previous relationships. He can have baby mamas, you know what I'm saying? And the woman, she can go get checked, and there's nothing wrong with her uterus, nothing wrong with her fallopian tubes. Everything is in working order, but they're not conceiving a child, and that can be mainly due to her womb choosing. So a lot of times, the man that the woman chooses is not always the man that the womb chooses. So the womb has the ability to decipher whether, utilizing the genetic DNA of the sperm, whether it's worth even allowing the sperm to enter the egg. Okay, because again, the egg is what calls the sperm to it, not necessarily the sperm chasing after the egg. Okay, so again, this is not something that is taught in our high schools and sex education, but as adults, we are responsible for what we know, so we are learning it now if we did not know. Okay. Individuals with complementary MHC haplotypes produce viable offspring, whereas zygotes of incompatible genotypes are aborted. Interestingly, there is a direct link between sperm competition and MHC in mice, okay, living under semi-natural conditions. So female mice that live in the territories of males with incompatible MHC haplotypes engage in extraterritorial copulations with males of different haplotypes as a way of increasing the genetic quality of their offspring. So if the men in her immediate circumference is not compatible with her, she will mate with men who are from another grouping. Basically, she'll go out of her immediate location to go find mates so that she can have a better offspring. Okay. It says, although this finding has been disputed in 1992, the result has been upheld in subsequent studies of the same population. So plant incompatibility systems may be involved in similar types of subtle mate choice at the post-fertilization level. Okay, you know what I'm saying? So variety also breeds survivability. So hopefully I'm saying that per word right. Okay, so yes. So now we're talking about, this is another book. This book is called Advances in the Study of Behavior. This was published in 2019. And it was written by Tommaso Pizzari and Grant C. McDonald. Okay, and this is from the chapter called Sexual Selection in Socially Structured Polyandrous Populations, Some Insights from the Fowl. So in this chapter, they are looking at polyandrous environments. The reason why so is because just earlier we spoke about how sperm competition and MHC are directly linked. Okay, so when a female is trying to choose the best genetic material for the most viable offspring, a lot of times it's best to choose from multiple males, and you can utilize the combination of what they provide for you, the sperm that they provide, and you can produce the most viable offspring. And they're looking at it through animals, of course, but we've seen this tactic done. If you have been following me on my polyandry page, you will know that this is done as well in the Amazons, okay, South America. So again, this is what partible paternity is in humans. This is why a lot of humans believe in partible paternity, because they see this expressed in nature. Okay, so again, I'm gonna read about the fowl, which is of course birds, and we can kind of get a better understanding of why they say these things. So again, it says here, different patterns of differential patterns of female sperm utilization after mating suggest mechanisms of cryptic female choice may be at play with regards to genetic incompatibility. So I wanted to bring this out because a lot of times when we're like doing research or we're learning something, you have to pay close attention. Like, don't read it like it's a story, but more so study it. Study these studies, right? So look at the words that they use. Okay, so what they're talking about here, they say, sperm utilization after mating suggests that mechanisms of cryptic female choice may be at play with regards to genetic incompatibility. So they're trying to figure out what is responsible for incompatibility in mates, right? Especially when the woman is utilizing different sperms, because we're talking about polyandrous environments, right? So they use the word cryptic. Cryptic means unknown or veiled, mysterious. So if they don't know, this is another way they can come out and say, I'm not sure. I really don't know. This is just my findings, but I still don't know, basically. So they use words like cryptic, okay? So whenever that's mentioned, this is why they don't necessarily understand the womb and its full capacity to determine, you know, the genetic compatibility of your partner, okay? So it says here, paternity of the offspring produced by certain females was consistently biased in favor of one sperm donor, despite the fact that competing sperm was standardized. So what happened was they created they did a experiment where they made a controlled environment and they gave the female bird 2 male birds in an area, and they wanted to see I think the first one was artificial insemination. So artificial insemination is the first, that's why they say standardized, because standardized is they give the female 2 different sperms and they see which one she produces a child with. So they do this standardized, meaning they're giving her equal amounts of sperm to see which one all the females give birth to, which one have the most viable and, you know, offspring. Okay, so standardized, they noticed with them doing it in a controlled setting like that, they noticed that the female was biased to one donor over the other, and they didn't understand why. Okay. Then it says this pattern is consistent with genetic incompatibilities arising in certain male-female combinations, influencing the outcome of sperm competition. So because a woman is able to determine your genetic history, your medical history, without even asking for your papers, it causes sperm competition within the vaginal canal. Okay? It says, second, presented Pizzari, Lovely, and Cornwalls in 2004, they presented experimental evidence that following natural mating, so now they're doing an experiment where it's more natural, like now they get to mate with each other instead of artificial insemination. Okay? The female red jungle fowl biased sperm utilization against the sperm of related males to avoid inbreeding. So again, she did not mate with her immediate siblings. So this is something you can tell from, you know, just your biology, right? The next thing it says is there was no evidence that differential sperm ejection through cloacal contractions caused these patterns, raising the possibility that sperm selection may occur further up the oviduct through mechanisms involved in the sperm access to the female sperm storage tubules. Okay, so what they're talking about here is they're basically saying that they said there's no evidence that differential sperm ejection. So when they say ejection, meaning sperm that is not accepted by the egg. So ejection meaning rejection. Okay, through cloacal contractions cause these patterns, raising the possibility that sperm selection may occur further up the oviduct. And what they mean by cloacal contractions, meaning cloacal meaning you don't know, like you can't tell. So it's not like they it's not like they are allowing her to choose from sight. So they're kind of putting them in these environments where it is more natural, like natural mating, but it's not completely natural, obviously. It still has to be a controlled setting for them to conduct the experiment. So they're basically going off of her body and how her body is choosing, not how she's choosing. Okay? So they, it says raising the possibility that sperm selection may occur further up the oviduct. So they're talking about, it says involved in the sperm axis to the female sperm storage tubule. So they're talking about her fallopian tubes. They're talking about the vaginal canal deeper up, you know, through the cervix, all of that. They're talking about up there. So they're trying to figure out, like, okay, this is obviously happening deeper inside where the sperm is being judged, basically. That's what they mean. A series of experiments using natural matings and artificial insemination approaches have shown that MHC similarity is associated with differential sperm utilization only to the degree to which MHC similarity predicts relatedness. Okay, so the experiment by Lovely in 2013 also showed that artificial insemination failed to generate patterns of biased sperm utilization. So the artificial insemination, it failed. So they was unable to see the bias in the sperm competition, right? But they can see it more in the natural setting. It says, this could be explained by methodological factors such as the lower number of sperm successfully transferred during artificial insemination, like they couldn't, you know, actually penetrate the egg, or could reflect biological properties. For example, artificial insemination eliminates phenotypical cues of the male who might be required in order to trigger mechanisms of female sperm selection. So they're talking about the mating ritual of actually choosing a mate, pheromones, all that other stuff that we use to choose a mate before we copulate with them. So that's what they're talking about. And when you do artificial insemination, that aspect is just not there. And that can also basically affect how or whether the egg is accepting of the sperm, because it doesn't have all of the proper information, because it hasn't gone through all of the processes that the body needs to determine whether the sperm is a genetic match or not. Okay? So similarly, artificial insemination bypasses the first part of the female vagina, and differential responses may be prevented without sperm exposure in this region of the female oviduct. So yes, the first part of the vagina, all of that plays a part. So it's not just the womb, the uterus, not just the uterus, but everything plays a part. So it says, cryptic female choice, they're using that word again, cryptic. Cryptic female choice, meaning mysterious female choice. We don't understand how she's able to choose. May represent an important strategy for females to influence the genetic polymorphism of their offspring, given the high viscosity of natural populations and the ability of males to coerce females into mating. Okay? So again, they're talking about the mating ritual of every species, basically. Similar patterns of cryptic female choice against inbreeding have been confirmed in a range of other species like crickets and guppies. Okay, male red jungle fowl were also found to substantially increase their sperm investment in females when mating after their own full sibling brother, compared to when they mated with a female after a male unrelated to the focal male. Okay, so this is extra. Of course, we're talking about the polyandrous, mating practices and how it actually has an effect on, the viability of an offspring, right? And we know that when we look at Tibet or India or any of the Eastern cultures that practice polyandry, you notice they practice fraternal polyandry over any other type of polyandry. And they've always done it because they felt that the children that is produced from a set of brothers would be able to inherit their land and assets, right? Because again, they're in remote areas where they might be a little bit more poor, so it would make more sense to allocate their possessions to one set of children rather than each young man taking a separate family and them having to divide their assets and their inheritance among different children and different families. So they do that on purpose. So now what we're focusing on is how does that actually affect when she's having children, because that's definitely a question that people have when it comes to women wanting to practice polyandry and men basically asking, well, I want to make sure that the kid is my kid, and how we know who the father is, and these are basically the questions that men ask. So this is actually the study that will actually let you know how a woman who is polyandrous, how she can produce viable offspring, whether the men are related or not related. Because in African countries, they typically are not practicing polyandry fraternally, so they're not doing it with brothers, but a lot of times they will do it with either cousins or just separate unrelated men, right? So we're trying to figure out how do each really affect when she's trying to have a child, right? So let's see what they say, right? So the male red jungle fowl were also found to substantially increase their sperm investment in a female when mating after their own full sub brother compared to when they mated with a female after a male unrelated to the focal male. So what they realized is that when it comes to the male versions of the jungle fowl, this bird, right? They noticed, they were surprised that they would have, they would increase their investment, their sperm investment, after she mates with a brother, a blood brother, rather than an unrelated male. So they're like, this doesn't make sense. Wouldn't you want to compete with your sibling more so than an unrelated male? But it says, this is puzzling because inclusive fitness theory predicts that relatedness should reduce rather than increase investment in selfish competition under certain conditions of population structure. Such reduction in selfish competition has been independently confirmed for male pre-copulatory behavior, which is competition over mating opportunities, by 2 studies of red jungle fowl. Okay, this was done in 2017. Okay, so they're wondering why there isn't selfish competition for mating opportunities with her. Like, basically, they're less likely to fight over the mating opportunity with her because they're related. Okay, that's what they're saying. So it says, if females were more likely to eject the sperm of a male if he mated with the female shortly after his brother, the second to mate of the 2 brothers may be selected to increase his sperm investment in such mating. Okay? So usually when you are related, the sperm, the genetic material that you are providing that woman is more related, which increases the viability of the offspring. So that's known by these birds like naturally without them doing any studies or anything. So that's why when it comes to their relatives, if they have a brother and they're mating with the same female, they will not fight him over mating with her, because they know it would bring about a more viable offspring, because their genetic makeup is very similar. Okay. Similarly, if clusters of male relatives were distributed discretely in a space, and a female moves from one cluster of males to the next, mating with some males in each cluster, pre-copulatory competition over mating would be largely among relatives. However, post-copulatory sperm competition will occur among the ejaculates of different cluster males. So what they're saying is, if she has the option of mating with both relatives and non-related, like if she's going back and forth between different groups of males and she has relatives and non-relatives, then the brothers would begin to fight. Because now it's not about them working together to produce the most viable offspring. Now it's about they become one entity basically. So if she has the option of mating with other men outside of the brothers, then it becomes a competition, because they each want her to have their genetic imprint on the offspring. They each want to have an offspring with her. But if it's just them, they won't fight. But if it's them against other unrelated males, now they have to fight, because now it's like, well, she has to choose one of us to have offspring with. Okay, so that's basically what they're going to do. So now it says, it is possible that this scenario may create the conditions of related males to derive inclusive fitness benefits by investing more sperm when mating with the same female in order to outcompete the ejaculates of unrelated males that the female would receive when moving to other male clusters. So yeah, exactly what I just said. So they have to outcompete the other males now. But if it's just them, they're more liable to not fight each other. I said all this to say, just to show you how their MHC, their haplotypes, their alleles, their genetic makeup plays a part in sperm competition. So sperm competition is actually natural. It's really natural. And that's why a lot of times from polyandry, a lot of men may prefer monogamy or polygyny over polyandry, because then he doesn't have to worry about competing with anyone as far as sperm competition, because sperm competition is just natural. You know what I'm saying? It's a natural thing. And so what happens is, but when they do that, when they're focused on their selfish inhibitions of like, oh, I don't want her to have no one else's child, I want her to have my child. When they do that, they're not thinking about the ultimate viability of the offspring. You know what I'm saying? So if you're in a monogamous relationship and you realize that your wife is struggling to conceive, even though she's healthy, her reproductive organs are in great condition, you're healthy, you're able, everyone that she's fertile, you're both able to conceive, but you both are struggling. Or every time she does get pregnant, she experiences a miscarriage. Then as the man, you have to look at it like, okay, we may not be a genetic match. We may not be compatible genetically. You know what I'm saying? But this is something we don't learn in schools, so this is not a thought that's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? But it needs to happen. Both the man and woman need to realize that we have children based off of our genetic compatibility. And that's why a lot of times when a black woman is conceiving with a Caucasian male, she has to get a shot that will tell her body to not abort the child, meaning not to have a miscarriage. The reason being is because the genetic, the genes that's coming from the Caucasian male is so different, is so dissimilar, that the body will think that it's the body will determine that that offspring is a foreign entity and attack it like it's a cancer or a tumor or something like that. So so most times women have to get a shot that will suppress that urge to attack the fetus. Okay, so that's one way that we can realize that our body has been producing children, and we have been conceiving based on our biological responses, and the womb choosing based on the genetic material that the man is providing her, not necessarily us choosing the person. You know what I'm saying? So that's one example if we did not see an example that's readily for us to look up. But you can look that up. Okay, so this is how the womb is able to think. Okay, so again, the womb, does it have all four of these properties? Does it have subjectivity and desire? Yes, because again, it calls which sperm it wants. It desires certain males over others. That's why it will have a biased response to conception based on certain sperm donors. It will have a biased reaction because it likes certain males over others, because the desire is to have the most optimal genetic material to produce the most viable offspring. Okay, so can it think? Yes, obviously it can think. It can discern based on the DNA whether that man has any genetic abnormalities. You know what I'm saying? It can determine the family history, if there's any dormant autoimmune diseases or anything like that. Okay, so again, that's where the discernment comes in, the thinking part. So and again, this is also where our intuition comes in, right? So we also have womb wisdom. That's what I call womb wisdom, is our intuition, our ability to think with our womb. And our womb is the portal, the connection to source. So that's when we tap in, we're tapping into not just our heart space, but we're also tapping into our womb, which is the darkness, okay? The space of creation, the source of all creation. That's where we get our genetic memory from. Our genetic memory is from our mitochondrial DNA. So our mitochondrial DNA is within all of our cells, of course, but it's through this center that we are activated. The memory is activated. We can remember things, right? So again, 3, intention, reason. Does the womb have intentionality, reason? What is the reason for the womb? The womb's reasoning or intentionality is to create life. To create life, the source is always in creation mode. That's what it's there for. It's there to create, and give us the wisdom through our source. Wisdom through creation. 4, agency. Does the womb have sensory motor activity? Yes, it does. The womb does what it needs to do. It works on its own. It knows what to do. It contracts and expands during our menstrual cycles. It contracts, especially when it's time to give birth to a child. The womb contracts and the cervix expands to the child to come out. Honestly, we have our cycles, our uterine lining sheds when there is no conception. So these are the cycles and the things in which our womb does on its own, and it continues to It also cleanses itself. You know what I'm saying? So there's so much that the womb does. So it has all of these things, just like the brain and the heart. This is the Holy Trinity, okay? This is what the Holy Trinity was in the beginning of this particular reality, okay? Before there was different genders and all that other stuff, okay? So this can pertain to both men and women because it's not really about gender. Gender is not something that is cosmic, right? There's no gender with the source. There's energy, but there's no gender, right? So what we are looking at is the brain, the heart, and the womb, okay? The only thing that men are missing is the womb, right? So we have that part. We have the third mind. You know what I'm saying? We have the third mind. Like men, we have, I mean, you guys have the brain and the heart. We don't necessarily use the heart that much, but you have the capacity to use your heart, okay? You do not have the womb, which is why, but that's what happens when, you know, you have less of your genetic material. It's like, I think, 1,098 less genetic material on the Y chromosome than there is on the X chromosome. So when that happens, if you had all of your genetic material, you would be an XX and you would be a woman. But if you don't have everything, then there will be certain things that will be dormant or not working in your physiology. So that's why your chest do not grow into breasts. They do not produce milk. That's why you do not have a womb. You have a prostate, which is an atrophied womb. Okay? So there's a lot of things. That's why you do not, you do not produce, you cannot give birth to children and things like that. So there's just one aspect that's missing, but that's just because you have a little less genetic material than women. And that's not to make you feel any kind of way, of course, but that is the reason why when it comes down to spiritual elevation, a lot of kings back in the day, they would consult oracles because they had a particular wisdom, the womb wisdom, that they didn't have. Women are able to, they have the potential to see a situation in a manner in which men are not able to. So you go to the women for that extra wisdom and that extra insight that you may lack. And that's where women was always respected before colonization, and then we forgot about the mother. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so if you have questions, go ahead and ask them now. And if not, this is all for today's class. It's safe to say that women are the true image of the Holy Trinity because they possess a womb, and that men lean more towards a spiritual binary because of their lack of a womb. Yes, that's absolutely true. Women have 3 minds and men have 2 minds. Sorry for the long question. No, that is absolutely right. You understand it. You understand it completely right. So yes, because men have 2 minds, that's why they look at things in a binary fashion. And because women have 3 minds, we're able to see things from a different perspective. We're able to step outside of it and be able to understand things from a more circular perspective. So that's why a lot of times, if you have been in my group on Facebook, you would know that I speak about the linear thinking versus circular thinking, and I think I'll go into that in another class. But yeah, men think like this. They're binary. Women think like this, circular. So the reason why is because they have 2 They have two minds, 2 points of reference. We women, because we have 3 points of perspective, we're able to see things from a different way. So this is why this is the, the Holy Trinity here. You know what I'm saying? This is the Holy Trinity here, and that's why men only see male and female. You know what I'm saying? Just male and female. So, and even in the Egyptian Holy Trinity, they'll have the father, mother, and child. They'll have the father, mother, and child, right? But the child would also express as a gender. If we're going to use gender for the Holy Trinity, the child would also express as a gender. So what gender would the child be? The gender could end up being, if the child isn't intersex, right, is going to be a boy, right? When you go to check the gender of the child in your sonograms, you're learning whether it's a boy or girl, right? You're learning whether it's a boy or girl. So that would mean that this would be imbalanced because it either would have to be a boy or girl, But this is why I don't teach it in this fashion, because it's inconsistent and it doesn't really make sense, because again, gender is an illusion. Gender is an illusion. So that can't possibly be the, and if the child is intersex, right, then you would have to make both the mother and father intersex as well, because you can't be definitive about the father and the mother's gender and not be definitive about the child's gender. You know what I'm saying? So it's either gender is fluid or it's not fluid. You know what I'm saying? So in the Kemetic spirituality, it is not fluid. It's not as fluid as we are now. So they have mother, father, and child, but it's really mother, father, and young boy, Osiris, Isis, and Horus. So that's 2 masculine. That would be 2 masculines and 1 feminine. So you see how that is inconsistent and it doesn't really make sense. So it's not the Holy Trinity, really. It's not balanced. It's imbalanced, because then there's more masculine than feminine. And that's the problem. That's the problem with society today, where there's more masculine than feminine energy in our society. And that's why we have all the issues we have. But, yeah, I mean, that was a really good question. I'm glad you asked. That was a really, really good question. I love you all. And I had to come on here and do the best that I can to provide class today. And I'm so glad that you guys came. Thank you so much for coming and being consistent in your higher learning. And I will see you all next week, same time. Again, it's 10 a.m. Eastern, which is 9 a.m. Central. Okay? So, and if you are on the east side, it's a bit too early for you, you can always watch it on YouTube, right? But thank you so much for coming. That's today's class. And remember, the Holy Trinity is the mind, the heart, the womb. And that would mean that the path to enlightenment is through the womb. And we gain our salvation through the woman, because she has insight that most of us do not have, okay? So thank you so much for coming. I love you so much. Blessings and much love. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.